Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Demczak, and our goal for this show is to encourage you to take the next step in your leadership journey by examining the high-performance habits of current and former athletes, successful business minds, spiritual thought leaders, and lifestyle entrepreneurs. I'm really excited about the guest we have today on the show. He's a former Major League Baseball player. He's a husband and a dad. And he's making a huge difference through his nonprofit really all across the country, here in the U.S. and even beyond. And so today's episode, you're going to hear about what it's like to get, to play in the major leagues for your hometown team. You're going to hear about how to set realistic goals and how to maximize your platform to make a difference. Today's show is brought to you by Drury Outdoors. Drury Outdoors is about to launch their brand new 2.0 DeerCast app with new features and updates. The DeerCast app will help hunters of all ages get a leg up on the deer that they are after in the woods. With the app, you'll know the best days for deer movement, you'll have access to hundreds of educational hunting videos, and there's a new tracking feature that allows you to have a greater recovery rate when hunting. To check out more about this brand new app from Drury Outdoors, you can go to deercast.com. Once again, that's deercast.com. And thank you so much again to our sponsor, Drury Outdoors. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Kyle McClellan. All right, guys, super excited for our guest today. Someone who's made a huge impact in the game of baseball and in the community and for other people. Kyle McClellan. Kyle, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. And what's new in your world lately? What have you been up to these days?
It's been busy. Every day's different, which I like. But kids are growing and becoming more and more involved in activities, so that's becoming more of our life. After school gets out, and during the day, it's usually try to get to the gym and then knock out emails and stuff from the charity standpoint and other obligations I have. So I love that every day is different, but kind of keeps you on your toes. And some days you wish things would slow down, other days you wish you had more going on. So I guess there's never a compromise, I would guess.
Absolutely. And today I want to focus on maximizing your platform and making the most of what you've been given. And I think the reason why we're really excited to have you on today is just because you're a perfect example of that. You're someone who you've had a lot of success in your career, in your life, but you've also done really awesome things for people, and you've used that platform that you've been given. And I think a lot of people in life, it's really easy to think, oh, if I'm not the CEO of the company, or if I'm not a pro athlete or a politician, who am I to make a difference, or can I actually, make a difference in other people's lives? But I think that the truth of the matter is that we all have a platform. It doesn't really matter how large or small it is, but we all have a platform. And, I guess just to start this off, why are you so passionate about using your platform that you have to make other people's lives better? Like obviously in baseball, and then now even after baseball for you, what makes you so passionate to use the platform you've been given?
Well, I think one, it's a responsibility. You look back at how things happen and people that have invested in you and that have shaped your character and kind of your path. And then you now have the ability to potentially do that for other people. And I think it'd be a shame to let that go. I think it would be a waste of people that have been placed in your life and lessons that you've learned to kind of selfishly, kind of sit down and say, hey, I'm going to just do what's best for me and kind of go from there. I look at my career path and, through my time in baseball, and I was 28 years old and retiring and trying to figure out what was next. But I've achieved that ultimate level of success in terms of being at the highest level in baseball. There's no higher level than you can go than Major League Baseball. And I've learned and developed a lot of skills to get to that point that I can apply in other areas and I can teach other people. And so for me, I was meeting with the CEO of a big company. He said, he kind of said, why are you doing this? I said, because one day I'm going to get to the throne, and I'm going to have to answer for all the people that have been put in my life and all the connections that have been made and the doors that have been opened. And if I can't, don't want to get to that point and say I did nothing with it. I said, how can I not do something with all of the resources and connections and people that have been placed along my path to turn around and do that more. And the real thing is that, your platform in sports is only so big, and it's only going to last so long, but you can continue to grow that platform post career and make that platform have a lot longer lasting ability than just a short time of a playing career.
That's great. And I think a lot of times in our culture, and maybe even, millennials, Gen Z, people who are, now entering the workforce, it's really easy to have this thought of kind of like the imposter syndrome of, who am I to be in this position, or who am I to make a difference, I guess. You've had a lot of success in your career. People would look at you, they would look at your Instagram and say, wow, this guy is really successful. Does someone like you in your life, do you still have those moments of, who am I to make a difference in this situation?
Nope. never had that mindset. Never had that thought ever. I don't think successful people can have that mindset. I think it's more of I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to do this. I'm going to achieve this goal. I don't think in my whole lifetime ever thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I don't know if I'm going to, if I'm going to put my time and effort in this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to reach that ultimate goal. I don't think that's in the mindset of successful people.
That's great. That's huge. There's a huge analogy in that for sports and for business and for life. So that's great. And growing up, kind of going back to when you were a lot younger, was it always on your mind? Like, did you set out when you were, in middle school and say, like, I'm going to play in the MLB someday? Was baseball always kind of that it thing for you that you were going to do?
I think, as a kid growing up, I loved baseball. I think every kid, right, thinks they're gonna be in Major League Baseball, and I was no different. I had no idea what that meant, so I was more smaller focused. I wanted to be the best player on my team. And then I wanted to be the best player in the league, and then I wanted to be the best player in the state, and I would just continue to work and achieve those things. And then I thought, I might be able to play baseball in junior college. I think I could probably get a scholarship somewhere, and ended up, having colleges look at me, ended up signing at Mizzou to go play there. And then at that point, it's like, maybe there's some professional teams that are interested. I mean, maybe I could, get into the minor leagues and see what I could do, and kept pushing and working and got to that point. But even then, you just don't understand the process and what all goes into it. I remember my buddy and I joking that we thought in high school we could go down and pitch an inning for the Cardinals and have a 1-2-3 inning. And I got into rookie ball and realized really quickly I had no shot at that because I couldn't get anybody out in rookie ball, let alone the big league. So I think you're naive to the process. You're naive to how hard and how far away you are from that. But I think when I got into professional baseball, it was always there's no doubt I'm going to be a big leaguer. When you're drafted, they tell you out of 50 people drafted, there's only 2 of you that are going to make it to the big leagues. And my approach every time I was in the room and I heard that was, well, like, I'm one of them, so I wonder who the other one's going to be. Like that was just always the way that I saw things, and not really thinking about the negative statistics that go into that and all the other things that have to happen. It was just always like, I'm just going to continue to pursue and go, and ultimately I'm going to make it.
I think you're for sure right when you say that every young kid probably dreams of, playing professional baseball. I remember, growing up and watching the movie The Rookie, like every single day, like literally I would just like watch it over and over again. And just like, I just loved that. And then I got into football. So that dream ended for me. But what was it like? I know after you played in the league played in the MLB for a long time, it probably, you just kind of get used to that. I mean, what was it like going back to, you were drafted in the 25th round, the MLB draft by the Cardinals. What was that like to actually get drafted and realize that dream for you?
Yeah, there's 29 teams other teams that could have drafted me. And when it came down to the Cardinals, it's just kind of surreal. It's kind of like a movie, you know, a kid growing up here, huge Cardinals fan, and then to be drafted and to go down and put on that Cardinal uniform and be in the Cardinal family and the culture and things like that. You know, it's just, it's also one of those things that you don't really soak it in because you can't allow yourself to. I said that all the time when I made it to the big leagues, and people are like, oh, you know, playing in your hometown and, you know, what's that like? Has it really set in? And I'm like, no, I haven't let it set in because I can't let my guard down and allow that to affect my performance. So you just kind of keep going and keep grinding and keep looking forward. And then you realize after a couple of years, the business side of it, and you hear people say that a lot. And I mean, that's just a reality. You can't escape it. And so you see things that you wish you could unsee, or, you know, things that you never understood as a fan. And then you kind of lose that fan side of it, you know, and it just becomes all about the professional side, about developing, about growing, about making it to the big leagues. And even at that point, sometimes you kind of look around and pinch yourself, but the reality is you kind of become numb to the environment or the situation you're in because you're so focused on just staying there as long as you can and doing your job day in and day out, regardless of the uniform. And being here in St. Louis, there's a lot of special things. I mean, coming home and sleeping in my own bed every night and being around so many historic players and names and the history of the Cardinals organization, you know, was great. But sometimes you tune some of that out, you know, when you try not to get caught up in all that because you want to make sure that you're able to be successful and be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve on the field.
That's really cool. And going back to your time in the minor leagues, I think a lot of people, whether it's in their job or if they're an athlete, it's really easy to look to the next thing in a lot of ways. And I think sometimes when we look so far ahead, like to that next promotion at work or how much money we want to make doing whatever, we can kind of forget about what's right in front of us. What were some things during the years that you were in the minor leagues, like before you were on the huge stage, that you did mentally just to prepare, I guess physically as well, things that you did to prepare yourself day in and day out for that next stage that was coming?
So that's something I had to learn. And the reality is, if you go back and look at my career in the minor leagues, I didn't do a good job of that. And I didn't do any of that. I didn't know about the mental preparation side. To me, the minor leagues early on for me was I was just going out and playing with buddies. And it was kind of like summer ball, and I was just going to do that till whatever. And then I had elbow surgery in 2006, and that was what kind of started to change things. I guess it was 2005. And that's when I had the game taken away from me. And I grew up, I matured. I went through 22 months of rehab, and I started to figure out who I was as a player and as a pitcher. I started to refine my skills, understand how to make adjustments quicker because of that rehab process, because of the time I had not in a game, but just to focus on little things. And I had a coach, Al Holland was a rookie ball pitching coach that had a huge influence on me. We would just go to the high A games that were down there in Florida in the afternoon, and we would just sit there in the seats, and there's like 100 people there maybe, and we just talk. We'd talk about life. We'd talk about baseball. We'd watch at a higher level this high A team that I'd never been to and talk about thought process and just all these different things in that 2 years that I wasn't able to play, but it made me a lot better. And then when I got back, I was able to apply those things, and I started to realize and understand the mental side of the game more so than the physical. And so it took kind of having the game taken away from me and that reality, like, hey, you're not just going to play this game forever. It can be taken away in a heartbeat, and you better value it, and you better work a little bit harder, a lot harder, and get yourself mentally prepared if you want to be able to start climbing the ladder. Because at that point I had struggled pretty bad in the lower minor leagues, and I really never knew why. And now looking back, I mentally had no clue what I was doing, was not able to make adjustments, was not consistent. I mean, all the things that you look for in successful people, not only in baseball and sports, but in business and life and everything. A lot of those skills I didn't have.
That's cool that even during a time that you were, like you said, the game was taken away from you, you then find a mentor during that time, and then essentially a coach, a mentor. That's really cool. That kind of pushed you towards greatness. And you mentioned the surgery in 2005. What, even for the average baseball fan, everyone's heard of Tommy John surgery. What's I mean, obviously the recovery sounds like it's pretty long, but I mean, when you come back as a pitcher, are you just mechanically learning everything from like fresh? Is it all new? Like, what's that like to even come back from a surgery like that?
It's more of trust. So the mechanic side of it, you got plenty of time to work on the mechanic side because that's all you're doing is throwing. I mean, you start off throwing, 10 throws at 20 feet and then you kind of progress back from there. So you're getting plenty of time to work on the mechanic side of it. It's all about trust. So for me as a pitcher, it was that extension, my elbow my body would protect my elbow and not allow me to get that full extension at first. And you start to trust it and stretch those muscles and ligaments and everything out a little bit. And as you get more and more trust, as you're ramping up throughout this long process, it's a 12-month rehab. And for me, I ended up having another surgery after that. So it was 22 months from the day I got hurt to the day I pitched in the game again.
Wow.
And so that's it's full of trust, knowing yourself. And to me, I was able to work and develop on that changeup that I never had before and kind of focus on some other things that in the middle of game speed, it's hard to teach yourself or learn or willing to try a new pitch when you're trying to, fight for your life out there on the mound. And so I kind of took that time to develop another pitch, become a more well-rounded pitcher. But yeah, it's all about trust. It's all about repetitions and allowing your body to trust itself again to be able to let yourself do what you've done before.
Mm. And so you come back from the surgery, you get back to full speed. And then after how many years were you in the minors total?
About 6 years.
So 6 years total. And then you finally make it to the majors, you to the Cardinals, get through the system, make it to the Cardinals. And I mean, that had to be an unbelievable feeling. Like, what was it like the first time going to the big league stadium and pitch? Like, was that just crazy?
Yeah, it was opening day. So anybody listening here that's around the St. Louis area knows opening day in St. Louis is like a huge deal.
Yeah.
And so I've been a bunch as a kid and then to be there as a player, and I pitched, my major league debut was on opening day. So to do that in front of all my friends and family, was definitely a moment I'll never forget. Definitely a highlight of my career, just, doing that. And all those thoughts come to your mind. I remember sitting afterwards in the training room and just thinking about all the people that had a role in me getting there. I mean, it was definitely, I wanted to celebrate what I've achieved to get there, but you can't help but think of all the people, my parents, and all the sacrifices they made to get me to practice and games and the lessons and all the things that they've taught me. And then on the professional side, the coaches in high school and little league. I mean, just endless amount of people that have had a hand in you getting there. So I think all those emotions kind of go through your head, and then you quickly have to transition out of that because that, okay, I've gotten here and I've made my appearance. I'm an official major league player, but now the hard part starts, and that's to stay here. They always say that the hard part isn't getting there, it's staying there, because when you climb the ladder and you get to the top, they say when you turn around and look down, there's 100 people coming after your job. And that is the hard part, is not really allow yourself to break and keep your head down, stay focused, and know that I've achieved a portion of my goal, but it doesn't really do me a whole lot unless I can continue to stay here and kind of carve out my niche here on this team and be an everyday guy that I'm not worried about getting sent down to the minor leagues.
And like you said, very similar to baseball, football, NFL stands for not for long, right? And so it's very similar. Yeah. Like once you've made to that pinnacle, there's all these people behind you. And you had a great career, and you were also very intentional about just being a Cardinals fan myself, and just reading about you and seeing you do things. You had a lot of great relationships with Cardinals players and coaches, and you're still very involved with the Cardinals now and things like that. And I know you and Adam Wainwright are really close. What were, I guess, some of the relationships that you built? Someone like Adam Wainwright, you guys had a great relationship. What was it like just to get to that level and be able to cultivate those relationships for the Cardinals?
Yeah, Adam was a guy, he's probably the most influential, had the most influence of my life of anyone. And, I was at a time where I was 23 years old. I was newly married and playing in the major leagues in the town I grew up in. And I think Adam was a guy that just me and him were just kind of drawn to each other. We're outdoorsmen. We, like to hunt and fish, and we're both believers as well. And so we just kind of connected on a lot of different levels. And he was much more spiritually mature than I was, and was a guy that was, I got to witness him in that time in 2008. He was transitioning from young player to leader, and I got to be a part of that transition. And he was being given more by the older players. He had earned their respect on the field, certainly, but also the way he handled himself. And he was becoming a leader of that clubhouse. And I benefited from that. He was a guy that we would go to lunch all the time. We would get together and just kind of chat about life. And so more than just baseball, mentor on, being a husband and being a father eventually, and being a teammate, and, all these different things. It's, in the minor league, it's hard. In the minor leagues, it's all about yourself, because you're trying to be the guy that gets called up to the next level if needed. And you're trying to beat out the people next to you. That you're on a team, but it's not a very team mindset. And AAA is the worst place ever for that, because literally you're cheering for people quietly. You're cheering for people to fail or get hurt so you can have an opportunity.
That's crazy.
It's a really weird spot to be in. And then you get to the big leagues, and it's all about your team. It's all about winning, and it's all about individuals working together as a team. And that's something that in the minor leagues is, you play as a team, don't get me wrong, but there's a very selfish mindset in the minor leagues for people. And some have that team mindset and others don't and do not care. They just want to get in there, out of there, and into the big leagues. And so Adam was a guy that really helped me understand the value of team and teamwork, and what it's like to be a great teammate, and so many other lessons that I've learned, and still to this day. Naturally, when you click with that like that with somebody, you keep in touch. It's hard because he's still playing, and people all teammates, they all go their different directions, and you lose touch over time. But Adam's somebody that I've stayed in constant contact with, and continue to learn and try to follow in his footsteps every day.
That's really cool. And you had mentioned spiritual maturity and what you just said there about him. I guess how does faith play a role in your life now, during baseball, and now in this stage of life, being a dad, being a husband? What is your faith? How does that kind of navigate the way that you live your life?
Yeah, that's a huge part. It's a huge part of my wife and I, and who we are, and what we strive to be. It's had a huge influence on our life. And so we try to pass that on and replicate that and live it out. And, you have people that have stepped up and had that impact on us. And we try to do that for other people as well. It's definitely, when you have kids, it's a whole different animal. It's a whole different responsibility. And so your platform changes. And so, on my platform throughout the last 10 years has literally been different every year. The minor leagues, it's different. In the major leagues, it's different. You have to find your role, especially as a young player, and you don't really have much of a say in the locker room. And then you start to develop and grow and earn respect and some time in that locker room, the ability to kind of reach more people. And then I'm in the minor leagues with the Rangers at the end of my career. And, I have playing with 20-year-olds, and I'm 27 years old and been in the big leagues for 5 years, to transitioning out to leading my kids, leading an organization. So it's constantly changing, and you have to figure out how, you can't change who you are, but the way that you reflect that, and the way that you not impose that on other people, but the way that you find other ways to lead people is constantly changing.
And you had so much success during your time in the major leagues, and I want to go back to 2011. Statistically, a really good year for you. You played really well from everything that I've read. I think in September, you were the most used relief pitcher in the entire league. You had a total of 141 innings. You had a record of 12-7, which is great. And then you started to have some shoulder pain. What happened with that?
I had the shoulder pain actually earlier that year. I was dealing with it all year.
Wow.
But yeah, I was a reliever and my whole career, and that year that Adam Wainwright had Tommy John surgery and in spring training, I stepped in the starting rotation. And I think the wear and tear of the innings, I doubled my innings that year, more so than any innings I've ever thrown in the big leagues, even the minor leagues. The most innings I had, I think, was 115 innings, maybe 120 maybe. And then I went to 140 something innings that year. And I was never the same since. I dealt with, about halfway through the year in May, I started dealing with shoulder injuries and shoulder pain, and could never really pinpoint it until the following year. Ended up having exploratory surgery and found what the problem was and had that repaired, which led to another surgery and another surgery and another surgery. So It was one of those that when it started, it kind of downward spiraled, and it was something that ultimately led to the end of my career, unfortunately. But 2011 was a great year, and we get in on the last day of the season, and I always look at that year and say, had I not been in the rotation, or like I said, won 12 games that year, if I would have won 11, we don't get in the postseason, we don't win the World Series. So my contribution to the team was early on, and early on in the regular season as a starter, and then at the end as a reliever, which led to me not being able to be on the roster for the postseason, but led to us having an opportunity and a chance for the rest of the team to kind of pick up where I couldn't do it. And I'm able to wear that big shiny ring because of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, in so many ways, you and obviously your teammates as well, but you were a huge part of, like you just said, why the Cardinals were even a part of the World Series that year. And so I guess, what was that like, having that contribution and then getting all the way to the playoffs and the World Series, and then you're kind of, you went, I think I read that they put you on inactive just because you had the injury, so you couldn't play. And so what was that like for you to kind of just have to sit back and watch? Was that pretty tough for you?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. There was some difficult conversations that we had to have, and no competitor wants to hear that you can't compete. But for me, I knew I wasn't right. They knew I wasn't right, even though at the time I was like, I'll be fine. I can go out and do it. I'm just glad that me being out there not at 100% didn't lead to our team not being successful. And so it was a hard one to swallow. It was hard to show up every day and know that you can't contribute. And if anybody's ever been involved in sports, and when you're injured and can't play, you just feel like you don't have a value. You feel like you just show up and everybody's kind of looking past you, regardless of what you've done or what you can do. It's, you can't help them that day. And that's not actually the thought people have, but that's how you feel as being injured. You feel kind of useless. But I was determined that I was going to come in and be the best cheerleader I could. I said, hey, I can't contribute, but I'm going to be there on the top step. I'm going to be rooting you guys on. I'm going to be, giving everything I have. And I had a great seat for it. It was a great few series. I actually ended up on the roster for the NLCS after not being on the NLDS, and only pitched a little bit. And it was clear I wasn't right, and was taken back off for the World Series. But it was definitely a thrilling ride, and I couldn't be more proud of my contribution and the rest of the guys on the team, and how we were able to come together and be one of the best teams in the world.
That's such a great example of, we can't control in life what happens to us, but we definitely can control our response, and how we respond to adversity. And that's a great example of, like you said, you're going to show me the best cheerleader. Like, that's really cool to hear that coming from someone who is such a competitor like yourself. And I think just one quick story I wanted to share. I think when you think about making an impact and making a difference, I think we're in this age now of like full accessibility with social media, and we're able to see what everyone else is doing in life, and it's never been this easy to compare our lives with other people. And I remember last year I was in Georgia. I was giving like a keynote talk at a company, a great company. And, I gave a talk, and it seemed like it was very well received, and I thought it went really well. And, multiple people after the talk came up and said, thank you so much for coming. That really resonated with me. And, it was a very fulfilling feeling. And then I remember when I was getting on the plane, just waiting for us to take off, I remember just looking on my phone, and there was one of my buddies who he's been speaking for about 10 years, and I've only been speaking for a year. he posted a picture and he had an audience like, mine, there was 250 people in my audience. There was probably over 1,000 in his. And I remember in that moment, I wasn't even able almost to enjoy like the gratification I just had from that awesome talk, or like whatever, the awesome event that just happened and the awesome interactions I had with people, because I was like, man, how do I get on that stage? How do I get to that level? And I think with social media, that just, it's not that it's a bad thing necessarily, but we always are in the know and we can always compare, okay, how do I line up with someone else? And, I heard a quote that said, comparison is the thief of joy. And so when we compare, like, we're robbing ourselves of the joy of the blessings that we've been given. And so for you in your life, now that baseball's over, and you're doing so many different things now as well, how do you focus on the things that you've been blessed with rather than looking around and saying, oh man, I wonder why don't I have that life? Things like that.
Well, I think that's a double-edged sword, because I think you need part of that to continue to be competitive and have that desire, right? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with, especially when you're starting out. I mean, think about an entrepreneur or a business mindset of, you want to do 100,000 the first year. Well, the next year, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying I want to do 400,000 or 500,000.
Absolutely.
It's that balance. It's that balance of saying, at what length am I willing to risk that? And so, like, what am I willing to go so far all into focusing on that person and those other companies that are doing well, and then lose track of the path that I'm on? Or is it like, that's like 10% of what I see and what I want and what I want to do, and that motivates me, but the other 90% is, where I kind of stay on track. So I don't think there's anything wrong with comparing yourself to other people, as long as you also have that reality of as long as you have that natural breakdown and progression of what it's going to take to get to that point. For you to say, hey, it's my first day speaking and I expect to sell out Busch Stadium, well, that's unrealistic. And if that's all your mindset is, you're never going to get to that point. But if you say, you know what, in 5 years, I want to get to this point and I want to sell out Busch Stadium, and here's the way that I'm going to go about that, and you follow that and you trust that process, and you have to tweak that process, because the reality is it's your first day. You don't know what you're doing anyway.
Right.
But so that's going to change. I think that's a healthy thing. I mean, you want to have your goals, but for me in the nonprofit world, I still do it. I mean, I look at organizations that we meet with and I'm like, dang it, I want to be on their level. I want to do that from a standpoint of helping more people, to also, growth and how do I grow our supporters and our company, essentially. I mean, I look at our nonprofit as a company, but at the end of the day, that I don't make any judgments or decisions on the company that are geared towards that, so I'm not saying geared towards that number or that goal immediately, but I continue to trust and follow the process that I think is going to get us to that point in a couple of years. So yeah, I think social media, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of social media. It's something that when I played, I didn't do. I didn't want people to have access to me, and I just felt like I needed to be in a bubble to be successful. And it's a double-edged sword, because it's a great. I feel like I could have really reached more people had I focused on that and developed a brand and a platform when I was playing. Now, you got Twitter, which I think is just evil. I mean, people are so brutal on Twitter. It's embarrassing. And so I don't do a whole lot on that anymore. And then, the Facebook is, for our charity, is our best way to reach people. And for me, it's more of a personal way to connect. But Instagram's become definitely my most enjoyable platform to interact with people, and my most active platform. But I don't use that to kind of compare my life to. I don't have time, to be honest. I don't have time to do that. I mean, you scroll through and you see it, but I don't have time to put too much energy into what other people have and what I don't have.
That's really good right there. Just make yourself so busy doing great things that you don't even have time for it. That's perfect.
Right.
So speaking of Instagram, we had a question from a listener. Last night I'd asked, if Cardinals fans wanted to ask a question. And so here was the question from someone on Instagram last night. The question is, the Cardinals are a first-class organization in every aspect. I'm a business owner and I want to create a positive culture with my employees. what makes the Cardinals culture so great that allows them to have success year after year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll tell you that it is culture is something that's really interesting to me. And the reason being, because I had the opportunity to be with the Cardinals organization and see how they do things. Culture is 100% dictated from ownership, from top leadership. So we have in the DeWitts an incredible ownership team who strongly believes in doing things the right way. Doesn't cut corners, all those types of things. And that trickles down. Then you want to look at a hire. It's amazing to me. Anybody in the front office there, and I'm not talking about general manager and that. I'm talking about front office, including season ticket salespeople to corporate salespeople. I mean, people that have an office there in Bush Stadium, they're all exactly the same. They hire people that are willing to buy into the culture, and those people take it seriously. They invest in the culture, and they become the culture. And it is incredible how successful they've been that way. There's no mistake about the fact that you look across baseball and you look at teams that have been successful historically over the last, call it 40 years, a team that's consistently been successful, they're going to have that culture. If you look at teams that do not win, there's a culture issue. You can almost guarantee it. And then when I got into the nonprofit world and dealing with corporations and things that we do in North St. Louis, you can walk in the door to some of these companies and figure it out. Like you can figure out if that culture is there or not. And then you look at the name of the building you're in, and you're like, oh, well, that's not a surprise. This is one of the most successful companies in the United States that's based here in St. Louis, and they have an amazing culture. So the culture 100% starts from the top, and it starts from leadership being willing to do the little things, the small things, the things that they preach, not just telling other people what to do. I think so many people in leadership think that they can just sit behind their desk and tell people what to do. The best leaders I know are the ones out there making coffee, are the ones out there sweeping the floors when it needs to be swept, are the ones out there changing the toilet paper, cleaning up the bathrooms when they see things need to be done. It's not, I'm too good to do that, I'm going to make somebody else do it. It's things need to get done, I'm going to do it. And if you start taking that mindset and you start doing that, other people are going to pick up on that and they start to do it as well. And then when things need to get done, they get done. And it doesn't matter if it's a CEO or a person that just started their first day. It's an expectation of this is the way things are going to be done. And from a baseball and an organization standpoint, that trickles all the way from ownership down to the players, down to the coaching staff. It becomes the voice of the organization and kind of the heartbeat of the organization. And everybody buys into it and they want to be a part of it because you're successful.
Wow, that was solid answer. And you started your own nonprofit called Brace for Impact, and I think a lot of people, I want to do this someday, or I want to start a business or a nonprofit or write a book or whatever, and so few people actually go through with it. I guess for you, what made you want to start it? And then from everything I've seen, on social media and you've talked about as far as going to Haiti and actually witnessing it, what was it like for the first time to go over to a place like that and see what life is like for people?
Well, my wife and I for 3 years looked for something to get involved with here in St. Louis with our giving when I was playing, and we could not find that fit. And when we went to Haiti, Adam Wainwright invited us on a trip over there. I didn't know what I was looking for until I saw it, and I knew it when I saw it. It was kind of hard to explain at the time. I didn't really know. I just knew it was different than anything we looked at, and knew that it was a place we could come in and really make a difference. In terms of how do you start it, or why did we start it? We just saw a need. We saw a need. We had a desire and a passion, and that was kind of it. I didn't put a whole lot of thought into it, to be honest with you. It was just like, all right, there's a need here. This is what I want to do. I didn't think about what it could become, what it would do in the long term. It was so short-term minded of how do we do this? And our first goal was to build a second level to the orphanage and raise $200,000. And that was my goal. And I didn't know past that if we would continue to go on or if this was it, if we were just one and done, and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And as I got into it, and my career then came to an end, and so it was a great transition for me to go into that. And then about a year and a half into it, it was like, I think I'm stuck. I think this is something that we have to keep going. And it was hard because it took a ton of time. I mean, I was the one that did everything. It was a one-man show, and it didn't pay anything. I didn't take a salary on it, and it took a ton of my time. And we got to the point where we had to make the decision of, do we go all in on this, or do we let it kind of fizzle out? And there's too many people that depended on us at that point, and we couldn't let them down. And so we just kept going, and now we've grown it into the organization that it is today. And we have 3 full-time employees. I'm still head volunteer, so I kind of run the organization from a volunteer standpoint, and still have that vision. I'm the visionary and kind of the driving force behind it. But we've brought on full-time employees, and now we've brought our work to the inner city of St. Louis here, and just continue to grow. And I think it's more than, what I did or what we did or what my vision or how I wanted to go. We had so many great people that came around us that we just had to go. We had a great team that started to come together, and we knew that we could go out and achieve it. If you know in business that you can go out and really tackle one area of need and create something for that, and people are going to be on board and support that and get excited about it, you'd be crazy not to do it. And so that's essentially what we've done. We found a need. We feel like we have the best partners possible to be able to tackle that need. And we just try to accumulate the best people and team that we can around us to go forward and see how many people we can reach.
That's awesome. And so you've done a lot of work in Haiti, and then recently, I think, or more recently, you've done a lot more in St. Louis. And I think, at sometimes, maybe people who visit St. Louis, there's maybe sometimes a stigma of certain areas of St. Louis, like kind of a rough area. But I feel like a lot of times maybe they're just kind of saying that and not doing anything about it. But I feel like you are doing things about that. So what has it been like to do things like where you're from in St. Louis as far as work-wise?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of rough areas, but I'm with you. I'm sick of people talking about it and not doing anything about it. And so, here's my, when people, I hear it all the time. People all give their opinion when they hear you're working in the inner city and north city. They all want to give you your opinion of what's wrong. The reality is those people have no idea. They've never been down there. They have no idea it exists in our city. And all they're doing is showing how uneducated they are on the situation. And so you kind of listen and you try to learn from it and figure out, but I've been doing this for long enough. Those people are contributing to the problem. Mm. And when those people go and they talk to their friends, they have this misconception of how things are, and they think they know how things should be. But the reality is they're no expert in it. And I just think that that's a really dangerous spot to be in. I have learned a ton about the area that we're working in and the history behind it and the obstacles that we're up against that I had no clue about until we got involved and have our partner who's very trusted and knows the community there and knows the needs of it. The reality is I don't know the needs of that community because I don't live there. Mm. And so it's really important to find people that do, that you trust, that you can figure out a way to help them in a way that actually helps the people, and not the biggest problem people make in the nonprofit world is they come into an area that they want to help and they tell those people what they need. Mm. And it's the number one mistake people make. And I guess it's a hard concept to understand for some people, but if you want to help people, the best way to do it is to listen to those people. And people take this mindset of, I'm coming in to help you, therefore I'm greater than you are, and I know more than you do, and you want the life that I have, and so this is how we're going to do it because this is how I've done it. But that's not how it works. And so it's interesting in how you talk to these people, and I cringe every time I hear it because our city does have problems. We have a lot of issues, and they're not going to get fixed by people voicing their uneducated opinions on what the situation is to be fixed when they have no understanding of the situation these people are in and how they can get them out of it. So it's a dangerous spot to be in. And to be honest with you, you can do all the work you want and try to change things, but until we get people to stop the stereotyping and the just assumptions that they have because they've heard it from friends or family members, but have never actually been down there to experience it and understand it, nothing's going to get changed.
And how could people kind of support or learn more about Race for Impact and just get to know more about your nonprofit?
Yeah, our website is, we just updated it several months ago with a lot of information on both of our projects. Our video, we have a lot of videos on Haiti. And then our social media is Instagram and Facebook's our best way for the charity. We try to post once a day. We are very more Haiti heavy. We post more on Haiti, and that's strategically. We're still trying to build trust and relationships in the inner city. And so before we start giving out a whole lot of information or details on the work that we do there, we still have a lot of work to do. So I always tell people know that we're working just as hard on the inner city as we are in Haiti, even though optically from the social media platform, it might not look like that. But we just have a lot more work of relationship building in there before we are able to post more details about the work that we're doing. But we post the generic of what's going on, but we don't get into the nitty gritty of a lot of the stuff that we're doing there just quite yet.
That's really cool. And I'll make sure to have a link in the show notes to your website as well. But really quickly, I just want to talk about hobbies for a second. For me, looking back at a kind of an earlier time in life, about a few years ago, I would say, I kind of got in this stage where I was so busy that I didn't like allow myself to like have leisure time or to do things in some ways for myself and just to, get away from work or whatever it was. And, hunting is something that you're a really big hunter, just following you on social media and things like that. I'm from Chicago originally, and so that was never something that I did, but I just recently got into it about a year and a half ago. And I've just noticed like the solitude factor of just getting away and being in the woods has been a huge blessing for me. Cause I don't, probably like you, I don't take a ton of breaks, as often as I should. And you do a lot with Drury Outdoors. They're a great brand. They have, online videos, podcasts, articles, hunting articles, great content. You can check them out at druryoutdoors.com, and you're really involved with them. So what's your relationship with them been like? And for you as a hunter, I've seen the pictures, you've shot some massive bucks. So how long have you been hunting for? And is it just a huge passion of yours?
Yeah, actually, I started off waterfowl hunting. I didn't hunt as a kid growing up. We never did any hunting. And when I got into baseball, a teammate of mine in rookie ball, a roommate, we went trap shooting, and I kind of liked it. And then my brother-in-law was a big duck hunter, so I came back that off season and duck and goose hunted with him, and just kind of enjoyed it and did it quite a bit. You fast forward to 2008, I met Mark and Terry Drury when I was in the big leagues. They're huge Cardinals fans. They're here from St. Louis. And I said, yeah, I've never deer hunted before. And they said, we'd like to have you come out and get your first kill on camera. And so I had no idea who they were. And I was like, okay, whatever. It's kind of weird, but whatever. And ended up growing a relationship with them and harvested my first buck that next year. And then I just was hooked and buying my own farm and doing a lot of the work myself. And now that's where I spend, October, November, December, I'll plan my schedule accordingly. I hit it hard from April to September here in St. Louis. My family, we travel down to Florida for spring training, January, February, March. And that's kind of our getaway, our escape from just the grind, the day-to-day grind here. I'm doing a little bit of work down there, but it's also a time where we don't have the crazy schedule that we have here. And we that's really important for us. And it's kind of us resetting as family time. But September or October, November, December, I am pretty dialed into the hunting side, and I'm a part of the Drury Outdoors team. And so I'm on one of their shows, Critical Mass, which I need to produce some kills every year. And so it's something that, I enjoy. It's a challenge. I enjoy the all year process of it, of food plots and, things like that, and trying to make the land the best that you can to give yourself the best opportunity. I also enjoy that time with my kids, and we get up to the farm. My kids love it. My son loves the tractor. My daughter just loves being up there and fishing. And so they're just experiences that I get to have with them. that's different than what we do here. And so we try to expose our kids to as many different lifestyles or, culture, whatever you want to call it. Just as many things as we can so that they have an opportunity to be well-rounded. And so I love that up there, spending that time with them. And hunting season is more me. So my wife's amazing. She's a trooper. Like last year, 145 days. And a lot of that's up and back. So I'll go up about noon, get in the stand, and then get out, try to get back and, get the kids to be able to put them to bed. But I'm gone quite a bit. And the great thing is I can do all of the charity stuff and all that from my phone, especially now having some employees that have taken some of that load off of me. But, I'm a big believer in everybody's got to have something that they can do to kind of get away and pull themselves away from the day-to-day grind of things. And in baseball, when I was playing, hunting was my off-season hobby because I was able to go up there and just took my mind completely off of sports and allowed me to kind of have that freedom that you don't have during the year. And I've just continued that into my retirement days.
No, I love that. I think it's so true. Whenever I'm in a deer stand, I feel like I have my best business ideas. I feel like I allow myself to, or whatever it is, I allow myself to have that bandwidth of like, I'm not going to say anything for the next hour and I'm just going to just listen and enjoy it. So that's really cool. And what would you say, just kind of wrap this up here, what would you say, where are you headed next? You in the nonprofit, what would you say is next for you in your life?
I don't know. I like I said, I tend to think more short term and day to day, and see where those things take me. I strongly believe in the process, and I don't know. I don't know where we could go. I mean, the reality is we could bump into one person that could completely change the trajectory of our organization and the amount of people that we're able to help. And so you just never know when that time's going to come. I feel like what we've done is prepared ourselves and built the engine to be able to withstand something like that. Because early on, that could really damage an organization. But I feel like we're getting to a point where, eventually something's going to drop in our lap that we're going to be able to kind of kick this thing into an even higher gear. But until that happens, we're just going to, stick to the process and trust it and see what happens. I would say that people have asked us before, do we have any intention to go to other countries? And I would say no. The reason we are in Haiti is because we have such a fantastic infrastructure in place, and I don't have the time nor have the funds to use to develop infrastructure. And so for us to reach more people is adding things to infrastructure we currently have to be able to reach more people. So we're doing that through vocational schools and trying to develop entrepreneurs down there and reach more people that way versus going to a whole different country where I don't know anybody in the language and culture there and try to develop something. North City's kind of the same way. We're trying to expand that and what we're doing. So, I don't know. I would say 10 years from now, I hope that we're a much bigger organization in terms of the amount of funds we raise, but the quality of impact that we're delivering is still just as good as it was day one when we were grassroots. And I think if we continue to focus on that, the results will be what they are.
That's really cool. And last question, at the end of your life, what do you want people to say about Kyle McClellan?
I don't really care. I don't know. I mean, I've never really thought about it. I don't really do
That's good.
what I do for other people to say one thing or another. I hope they say I was a good husband. I hope they say I was a good father. I hope they say I care about people, but at that point, I'm dead. I don't really care what they say.
No, I think that's the best answer we've received so far on that. So that's great. No, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for the impact that you've made, the difference that you made in other people's lives, and just the example that you've set for us. And just keep killing it, keep doing your thing, and just good luck to you in the future. And thanks so much for joining us.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Nice job.